We are back. Golenbock University. My name is Ralph Tyko, the host of the show, and the professor, Peter Golenbock. How are you, sir?
Just great. How are you, Ralph?
We're going to talk about bums tonight, and I'm always excited about that because as a Giant fan, an old New York Giant fan, I have found that my memories are intertwined with Giants, Dodgers. You couldn't have the aura of the Brooklyn Dodgers without the New York Giant rivalry. And that's the part of your wonderful book entitled Bums, about the history of the Brooklyn and even the Los Angeles Dodgers. I'd like to talk about the Giants rivalry part of it. We're going to be joined by Dodgers maven and podcaster on this very network, the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. His name is Peter Trunk. So we have two Peters, one in the house and one to join us momentarily.
Here I am.
Very good.
Are you here, Peter?
I am here, but I'm not all there.
Oh, well, I think you're in the right place for it, believe me. But we're here in the way that we should be. Peter Trunk, Peter Golenbock. I've been meaning to introduce you guys for a long time.
A pleasure.
Peter, let me say that I'm a big fan, and I've read all your books, and I'm a little nervous, to tell you the truth. I've been doing 100 of these shows, but Carl Erskine, I was nervous, and Peter Golenbock, I'm nervous.
It's a pleasure. Ralph Tyko, I understand that. And that's good.
True.
I asked Peter if he would give me, because the Giants to me would be nothing, my Giant memories, New York Giant, without the Dodgers and vice versa. So let's start off, if you would, Peter, with some...
You've got to declare which Peter you wish to speak to.
I know, this is going to be a little more difficult than usual.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, just say Peter Trunk or Peter Golenbock. Does that work?
There you go. Okay, Peter Golenbock, some memories when you were doing the books about the Giants-Dodgers rivalry that stand out in your mind. And then I'm going to ask Peter Trunk to talk to you about what he'd like to know about the bums.
Okay.
Well, the Dodger-Giant rivalry that sort of stands out in everybody's mind, of course, is the playoffs of the 1951 season, where Bobby Thompson hit that home run off Ralph Branca to win the pennant for the Giants. Now, I don't know how old you were at the time, Ralph, but for all those people I spoke to, the Giant fans, it was probably the most exciting moment of their lives.
I'm sure.
And for the Dodger fans, it was one more in a series of huge disappointments that began, many years before that.
I was only 5 when that happened, and if I may speak for Ralph, I believe he was only 4 when that happened.
No, we were both born in 1946.
Okay. So we were both 5.
So, and all three of us, as a matter of fact, are both are all 1946 baby boomers.
The Giants fans really, in terms of the great memories, probably was not a Giant Dodger event, but rather the Giants against the Cleveland Indians in the 1954 World Series. So if you want to break away for a moment and talk about the joy of being a New York Giants fan, that's probably...
I could live with that on a Dodger-oriented show anytime. Please.
Yeah. There you go, Ralph. That was the first. That was the first World Series I watched on television.
It was the first World Series I watched on television. Interesting.
There you go.
The first athletic event that I ever remember watching on television was when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile.
Bannister, right. Mm-hmm.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was in May or maybe June.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a Dumont television. I can't remember whether it was black and white. I think it was. I sort of remember that day and how excited everybody was that Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. And then, of course, you go to October when the New York Giants were playing the Cleveland Indians.
Uh-huh.
And you have Willie Mays in center field. Vic Wirtz got up and hit a ball about 490 feet. And Willie Mays went back. And to this day, nobody can really explain how in the world he caught this thing. But Polo Grounds had incredibly deep center field. And Wirtz hit it almost to the steps. In center field, the steps then went up to the two clubhouses. It was sort of an odd configuration in that the clubhouses were in center field. And Willie Mays ran back and caught the ball over his shoulder in a way that nobody could quite understand. And then he turned around and made an absolutely spectacular throw to double up the runner. To this day, people wonder or argue whether the most incredible part of the play was the catch or whether the most incredible part of the play was his throw.
Willie said he had it all the way.
Catch. Willie thinks it was the catch and that it was the throw, and that he made more spectacular catches in his day. He thought he had it all the way, and I don't know if he doubled up the runners, but he kept them, any of the runners, but he kept Al Rosen in particular out of scoring position. He got the throw back in so fast, wheeled around in one of the most athletic moves I've ever seen on a baseball diamond. The transition between the catch and the throw and the quickness and the way he threw back in accurately with all of his, he was like a Al Order. He was just put
and he was about he was 22 or 23 years old. He was a very, very young player playing for Leo Durocher, who actually absolutely loved this kid. I mean, interesting about Durocher.
We should go back to talking about the Dodgers and Leo Durocher and the significance of him going from the Dodgers to the Giants.
Sure.
What precipitated that? Because
what precipitated that was really a dislike by the commissioner, Happy Chandler, for Durocher. Durocher was something of a maverick. He liked to hang around with gamblers. There was a famous actor, you'll have to refresh my memory, who was also a gambler. George Raft.
George
around
Raft,
with him.
Yes.
And there was a photo taken of Durocher with a couple of rather notorious, gamblers. And so Commissioner Chandler had warned Durocher about that. But Leo was not somebody who took a warning necessarily to heart. And he continued doing what he did anyway. And
the commissioner, go ahead.
He suspended him.
Yeah. Well, the commissioner, when he brought Leo in, he said, "Do you have a relationship with blah blah and blah blah?" And he named two very, very well-known mob bosses. And Durocher said, "A nodding acquaintance." And the commissioner said, "Stop nodding."
Stop nodding, but he didn't stop nodding. That was the problem.
Right.
I mean, Leo came from Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yes.
He was the shortstop for the Yankees for quite a while. He was accused of stealing Babe Ruth's watch. But one of the things about Durocher, which I thought was really marvelous, was that in the 30s, when he was asked about the Negro League ball players, Durocher was one of those people who stood up to Kennesaw Mountain Landis, who was a terrible, terrible racist. And despite Landis telling Durocher to keep his mouth shut, Durocher proceeded to tell whoever asked him that he thought that there were at least a dozen or so players in the Negro Leagues who could well play in the major leagues.
Mm-hmm.
So I certainly give Leo that credit. But
right.
He was a character, all right. And the other sort of sad thing, and you don't know how this would have worked out, is that had he not been suspended, he would have been Jackie Robinson's manager.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, because Durocher would speak so highly of the Negro League players, my sense of it was that Durocher would have been a marvelous, marvelous manager for Jackie. That when some of these opposing managers, like the Phillies manager, pulled that bullshit that he pulled, calling
Sawyer
Robinson. No, it was
Ben
not
Chapman.
Sawyer. Chapman.
Ben Chapman.
Oh,
It was
Chapman.
Ben
I'm
Chapman.
sorry.
It was
You're right.
Ben Chapman. That had Durocher been the manager at that time, Durocher would have bitten his neck off. Durocher
Peter Golenbock, I think Durocher was the manager of.
No.
Wasn't he the manager in he was. Schotten was the manager, and
yes.
when they brought him back, Durocher
at the end of the season in 1948. In 1948, Schotten had been the manager in 47, and Branch Rickey, I suspect that what he did is he decided that Durocher was enough of a pain in the butt that he called Horace Stoneham on the telephone and talked him into hiring Durocher to manage the New York Giants. Which he did most marvelously. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we are.
Okay. The way, Peter, if I may, Peter Golenbock, if I may,
you may.
The way I read the story in more than one place was that Stoneham called the Dodgers and said and asked for permission to talk with Clyde Sukforth to become the Giants manager.
Okay.
And he was told, why do you want Clyde Sukforth when you can have Leo?
That's exactly right.
And Stoneham was incredulous.
Oh,
he said, I can have Leo.
Sure.
He said, sure you can. You can have Leo.
Sure.
And that's the way the deal went down.
That's exactly right. And really it was sort of, again, this is Rickey, who is, sort of, pushing things his way. Rickey needed to find a way to get rid of Leo. And this was the way he was able to do it, to the benefit of the Giants, of course. I mean, he won pennants in 51 and 54, and a World Series in 54.
Right.
I think the key to that was the trade with Milwaukee that the Giants made with Boston, with the Braves, where they got Stanky and Dark in the same deal. And they started trading off some of the older Sid Gordons and the slow power hitting, plodding guys to play Leo's game of running and mayhem and causing problems and stealing and.
Well, Alvin Dark's a very interesting kind of a character. He lasted in baseball many, many years, and he was a stone cold racist. Dark was. Dark created trouble wherever he managed because the black players just hated him because he was the way he was. He was one of these religious characters who in addition to being religious was also racist.
Well, and hypocrisy and full of hypocrisy as well. He lived his life in a different way than his religious teachings.
Oh, he certainly did.
And his players picked up on it. I remember talking to Marv Grissom, a good friend of mine, and he talked about Dark's incredible athletic ability. He was a fullback at LSU.
That's right.
I can't think of the All-American running back that he beat out at LSU in those days. Great college football player, and went on to be of the three shortstops in New York, certainly the best hitter. Not deserving of Hall of Fame status, but to be honest with you, I think the two other New York shortstops aren't necessarily Hall of Famers as it was set up.
Well, I disagree with you.
I know I'm going to get disagreement on
You get
Reese.
disagreement from this end.
And
Pee Wee Reese, you get disagreement because he was so instrumental in helping Jackie Robinson, make it through all the crap that he had to put through. And Rizzuto was the glue that held that Yankee infield together. He was a marvelous, marvelous player. I disagree. I think
Ted Williams said of Phil Rizzuto, if we had Rizzuto, we would have won all those pennants.
I think that's true.
I don't think Johnny Pesky liked that he said it, but that's what Ted Williams quoted to say.
No, that's exactly right.
Pesky was no slap. Pesky was pretty.
No, he was not.
Pesky was a marvelous ball player too.
Yes, he was.
It's interesting. The difference between the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Giants is that the borough of Brooklyn, the people who lived in that borough, it was a borough of Jews and Italians and Irish, Jews and Catholics. There was probably, three Protestants in the whole borough. But what held it together was the Brooklyn Dodgers. I wrote a book called In the Country of Brooklyn, which explains sort of why the people in Brooklyn loved Jackie Robinson so much. It's the nature of the people who lived there. The New York Giants were basically in Harlem. And Stoneham, who was something of a racist himself, which was an interesting situation because, Harlem was, a large percentage of Harlem was African American. And so, when I talked to Stoneham for the Bums book, and he basically said to me that he wanted out of the Polo Grounds. It was turning blacker. And he was heading to Minneapolis is where he was heading. He was looking for the whitest place he could possibly find.
Right.
And that's when Walter O'Malley called him and said, look, I'm moving my Dodgers to Los Angeles. Why don't you come to San Francisco and we could, do very, very well as a rivalry out on the coast. And it made perfect sense. I mean, Stoneham was not stupid. And that's what he did. But leaving the Polo Grounds,
I don't know if you can consider him a racist. I mean,
I can consider him a racist. Let me interrupt you. I consider O'Malley a racist as well.
Consider all of them. You can probably consider everybody in their times.
Well, that's true.
Stoneham is the guy that put the first three blacks together in the 51 World Series outfield. When Mueller was hurt, Hank Thompson went out and played right field, and
you make very, very good points. But I mean, the reason he wanted to leave the Polo Grounds, and I used to go to the Polo Grounds to watch the Mets play in their first couple of seasons, 62.
Me too, and
I adored. I'll tell you, that ballpark was sensational. They'd been playing games in the Polo Grounds since what, the 1890s? Something like that? When was the Polo Grounds built? I think in the 1890s.
Not that iteration of the Polo Grounds. There's like three iterations of the Polo Grounds.
Yeah, but whatever this iteration was, it was a magnificent, magnificent ballpark, and I just loved going there to watch the Mets play. And they never should have left. They never should have. They could have made it there, but again, and the argument too, when you go back to Brooklyn and O'Malley, it was that, supposedly, Robert Moses wouldn't, let him build a new ballpark at Atlantic Avenue and forcing him to build to go and play in Queens, so they couldn't be the Brooklyn Dodgers anymore. All of that is true. But the fact of the matter is, they could have stayed at Ebbets Field. They were making pretty good money in Ebbets Field. Now, they made a large fortune in Los Angeles, as it turned out. But he didn't have to leave. He could have stayed.
No, I could understand wanting a bigger ballpark, a better new ballpark, but when they offered him Queens, and I'm the Brooklyn Dodgers, Queens is right over the borderline to Brooklyn. You could have called it the Brooklyn Dodgers, and it wouldn't have upset Queens people, because Queens people were new to Queens.
That's true.
They didn't have that heritage of a team. They would have loved Brooklyn in Flushing Meadows.
All of that is true. I always had the sense, because he was talking about, they played in Jersey City one year. They played 9 games in Jersey City. I just had the sense from talking to the people who were in the front office of the Brooklyn Dodgers while I was doing bumps that O'Malley, I suppose it's possible if Moses had let him build that ballpark at Atlantic Avenue that he might have stayed. But the sense was that he really wanted to leave.
Right. And Peter Trunk, can you elaborate on that?
Oh, yes. I'd like to jump back a little bit, just put a period on the Alvin Dark discussion. When Alvin Dark was the Bible-toting manager of the Oakland A's, he outlawed the Spanish language in the clubhouse.
He sure did.
Whoa.
Nice guy, huh? And then moving a little bit forward, listening to you guys talk about Stoneham and O'Malley, I believe that with those two gentlemen, that they suffered from what many, many older white gentlemen suffered from back then, and that was casual racism. Yeah. If you put them underneath a truth serum, neither one of them would have admitted to being anti-black or in any way, shape, or form, and it would have come out that they were telling the truth. I don't think they in their darkest hour believed that. However, you read stories that like Buzzy Bavasi said that one day, Walter in 1956 or 55 or 56, Walter O'Malley from his office window called Bavasi in and pointed to a line of black people that were lined up across the street getting their checks cashed. And he didn't say a word. He just pointed it out to Bavasi. He just pointed at it. Didn't say a word. Just pointed at it. Yep. And, of course, the innuendo was screaming, there's our future, and we got to get the hell out of here. I think O'Malley had planned to go to L.A. Really, and you know what? People say, how can you say this, what I'm about to say?
With you. Finish your sentence.
I'm still talking about other people. As early as 1950, O'Malley had his eyes on L.A. Not just moving the Dodgers, but actual Los Angeles itself. He had his eyes on Los Angeles.
He did.
And there are things, and there are stories and interviews and stuff with people that quote unquote prove that to be true. O'Malley never wanted to stay in Brooklyn, even when he was coming up the ranks. And before he screwed Ricky out of the whole front office deal, O'Malley had his eye on Los Angeles, and it's been talked about ad nauseum, both on blogs and on Facebook, and even on this show. Not this particular show, but on Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I know I've covered it a dozen times or more on my show, and O'Malley was just, Here's a guy who had his picture taken in Los Angeles. O'Malley had his photograph taken in Los Angeles, holding up, with a big grin on his face, holding up the pin that said, "Keep the Dodgers in Brooklyn."
That's true.
I mean, he was rubbing it in our nose, and we didn't, when I say we, I was only 11 years old. I didn't even get it. But he was rubbing it in our nose.
Yes,
I'm out of here. I'm gone already. I'm gone. Remember that Eagles song where the Eagles sing?
Yeah.
The guy sings, "I'm already gone."
I'm already gone.
That was O'Malley's theme song. That was
right.
O'Malley's theme song. He was already gone. He was gone. And I have to remember to pronounce the word Gone correctly because it's the ow and gone that keeps her in her place, not her wretched clothes and dirty face.
Pygmalion.
Yeah, there you go.
And you read these books where they say, it's not O'Malley's fault. Bullshit. It was O'Malley's fault.
Well,
he was
jealous of Perini, who
Sure.
moved his team from Boston to Milwaukee and was making a fortune. And what was incredible to me about this whole thing is that the Dodgers were, at the time they moved, the most profitable team in the National League. So it becomes greed. It becomes excess. It's like a Trump. I see a lot of the same things in O'Malley that I see in Trump. It's just greed.
Yeah, Trump is more like Steinbrenner, quite frankly, than O'Malley. O'Malley had a certain amount of class. You may not have liked what he did to the Brooklyn people, but O'Malley wasn't nearly the thug. And don't think for a minute that Trump is not a thug. He is a thug.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's not baseball talk. That's something else.
No, we all know that. Okay, I'm going to give you a good. I just want to leave a good impression of O'Malley, and I've mentioned this on Peter's Dodgers show, Peter Trunk's Dodgers show. What he did with Campanella and for Campanella, who was tragically made into a quadriplegic, not just a paraplegic, in an accident in the winter of between 57 and 58.
That's right.
When they were moving, and never did get to play for the Los Angeles Dodgers. But O'Malley took care of him for the rest of his life.
He did.
He brought him out as a on-field coach in spring training.
They had a day for him where 100,000 people showed up, and they gave him a large part of that money.
Right.
They really did wonderful things for Roy Campanella. And Campy,
So
I knew Campy. I knew Campy. Campy was a lovely, lovely, lovely man. And he was very appreciative of the way he was treated. Always was.
Nice to hear that, because to live, especially an athlete who relies so heavily on their body. I mean, if a podcaster or a milkman or can make adjustments in life, but as an athlete that's so in tune with their body, and their pride is manifested by how many hits they got and how athletic they are. It had to be a horrible blow.
It was horrible, but the interesting thing is that Campy always had a wonderfully sunny disposition. You never would have seen it. You would have just been amazed at how he handled the whole thing. He was really quite amazing. And add to that the fact that his wife, who saw that he was not going to be the person that he used to be, basically started belittling him and then walked out on him.
Right.
It was terrible. And he
did more than that. She did more.
Yeah.
She did much more than that. She physically abused him, mentally abused him, had sex in front of him with other men. That was the wife he got. That was the wife he divorced. He finally wound up. He finally wound up with a woman that was very, very nice to him for the rest of his days.
Which one was Ruthie? Was that the second wife? Ruthie? Yeah.
I believe
Lovely
so.
woman.
I just finished. When I say just finished, about a month ago, I finished Campy, the excellent book by Neil Lanktot, and he covers the whole thing.
Oh.
And
I have not.
Campanella, I have to agree with you. Campanella was a sunny disposition guy for a guy who was in a wheelchair. I'll tell you that.
It was amazing.
Yep.
Amazing the way he was. I emceed a dinner for him in Las Vegas about a year before he died, and he just was the kindest. You know, he was so grateful and just you just wanted to give him a big hug.
Yeah,
he was that way. Yeah.
Peter Golenbock, how did you come to write the book Bums? It was if I'm not mistaken, it was the first book you wrote after Dynasty?
No, after Dynasty, I wrote The Bronx Zoo, and I wrote Number One with Billy Martin. I wrote Guidry with Ron Guidry. And then...
Before Bums?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Wow.
And I'm wondering if I had written the Greg Nettles book before Bums too. That's possible.
Okay.
But Bums came about. Bums came about because when I was 10 years old, my uncle Justin Golenbock, took me to the 1956 World Series. And after the game, he said, I've got to talk to Jackie Robinson for a few minutes. He was Jackie Robinson's lawyer. And so we went down and talked to Jackie, and I got to meet him. And, of course, I was this 10-year-old, and he was, you know, one of the most famous ball players in America. And it was something I never forgot. You know, it's funny, at Dartmouth, I wrote, I took, you know, a course in biography, and the paper that I wrote was about Jackie Robinson. I just always had a fascination with him. And so I pitched to G.P. Putnam's the idea of writing Bums. To do what I did for the Brooklyn Dodgers, exactly what I did for Dynasty.
And you've told me that the book basically centers around the extensive interview that you did with Jackie's wife.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. And the only reason, she never gave anybody any interviews up until that time. But she gave me the interview because my uncle Justin was their lawyer.
Well,
they appreciated it.
Is your uncle the representative that Jackie shared? I think Billy Martin shared the same representative.
No.
Was that him?
No, he was just a lawyer.
Oh, okay, well,
they were buying a house in Stamford, Connecticut, and he was somehow involved with that.
Okay.
I mean, Justin, and my aunt were friends with Jackie and Rachel. They would go up to the Concord together, and they would do things together. And he said that one time at the Concord, they were having a skating race on ice skates, and Jackie said to my uncle, "You know, I've never been on ice skates before. Why don't I give it a try?" And he put the ice skates on, and he won the race. Well,
wow.
I mean, Jackie Robinson, you could argue, I could talk about Jackie all day. You could argue that Jackie Robinson was the greatest athlete of the 20th century. You know, Jim Thorpe
you could say that baseball was his third best sport.
Well, I mean, it's astounding. It's absolutely astounding what he did at UCLA. He was he was an incredible basketball player. He was a football player. Had they allowed African Americans in football, he would have been a superstar in football. Unfortunately, the NFL didn't really become the NFL for a while.
Right.
And they didn't take blacks.
He and his brother Mac were track stars at UCLA.
Well, let me tell you, I interviewed Mac before Mac died. Mac was one of those people who was in the 1936 Olympics Mac won a medal in the 1936 Olympics. That's what a fabulous athlete he was.
Yep.
That's the Marty Glickman Olympics.
That's the Marty Glickman, Sam Fuller Olympics, where they wouldn't let the Jews run. Absolutely, 1936. But Mac went home. I don't know if you've ever seen the Jackie Robinson story, which is amazing. I teach a sports class, and I play that film for my kids rather than 42, because Jackie Robinson stars in that movie and does a wonderful, wonderful job. The guy was an actor as well. He had real tremendous acting talent.
He had charisma. He had a charm. His smile could light up the...
Absolutely. But the interesting thing about Jackie, of course, was that he really didn't have very many friends. He had one friend, and that was Rachel. I guess growing up black in America is true to a lot of African Americans. You wouldn't trust a white guy as far as you could throw him. Especially the way he was treated. When Jackie finally died, I think he was 53 years old. He looked like he was 80. What he had gone through in those 10 years playing Major League Baseball was just, astounding.
Well, let me give you my Jackie Robinson story that I got from Peter's interview or my interview. We both interviewed Carl Erskine. And Carl Erskine was playing, I think it was AA ball for the Dodgers on his way up. And the barnstorming Brooklyn Dodgers came up to play them at the end of spring training. And Carl Erskine pitched against the varsity, as it were, and pitched very well. And Jackie goes over to his dugout, and Jackie's like a rookie or second year. Obviously a black guy, goes over to Carl Erskine's dugout. This is in Fort Worth or some podunk little town, and he greets Erskine and tells him how good he was and how he looks forward to being his teammate. Now, this is a guy crossing the color line, taking the initiative as a leader of the ball club. I mean, you go over...
And you're talking about the 1940s. You're talking about the 1940s, for crying out loud.
Amazing. Right, exactly. He was probably the first black to play on that minor league field in the history of that little town. I'm sure there were people in the stands going, get out of here, and all the racial epithets that the man had to face. But he goes and Erskine said, I love the man for the rest of my life. I just he didn't have to do that. And remember, rookies in those days especially, they weren't unionized. They didn't have these things. Rookies were
rookies were treated terribly because the veterans had this great fear that one of these kids was going to come and take their job. That's why they were treated so terribly.
Another reason why you got to love Pee Wee Reese, who found out on the ship home from the war that another shortstop had been signed, that Jackie had been signed. And he's from Lexington, Kentucky. He's got to go home and take the abuse of you're going to play with this guy, you're going to play with a black guy. He had to overcome so much internally. And Red Barber, bless his heart, he was not the greatest human that ever lived on some things.
No, he wasn't.
But he, too, decided took a deep breath and put his Southern upbringing aside for the cause of humanity. And
also his job.
I'm not saying that...
he put it aside for the cause of his job, too, by the way.
No, but the cause of his job, but it was a lot of people from the South would have given up that job.
Yes, no, it's true. And a lot of his friends wanted him to.
Right.
They wanted him to give up that job. They couldn't believe. I can't tell you the sort of things they were saying to this guy. It was disgusting.
Right. So give those two Southern crackers, if you will, coming in, credit of, and when I say for humanity, Dr. Martin Luther King credits Jackie with being the real father of all of the civil rights movement.
I couldn't agree with you more.
It would have happened eventually, but I'm sure it would have been years had Jackie not made it possible. It would have been many more years before that.
Most definitely. Couple of things about Jackie that I'd like to say, if I may. I would have loved to have seen Jackie's career be expanded both back and forward. In other words, I really wish he had come up. I'd love to see his numbers after he was done. If he had come up in 43 or 44 instead of in 47, he would have had much, much better numbers, I think. I think his prime years were spent wallowing away down in Kansas City or wherever he was.
I think he only played a very short time. He only played
for the Monarchs 1 year, but he.
That's right.
It was brought up earlier, and it wasn't news to anyone that baseball was not his best sport, and to be a Hall of Famer in a sport that's not your best sport.
Well, that's why I'm arguing. That's why I'm arguing he might be the greatest athlete in the history of America.
He's among them. He's among them. I also would have liked to see him play that one last year for the Giants in 1957. I would have loved to see him bat for the Giants against Sal Maglie for the Dodgers. It would have been tremendous theater. Tremendous theater.
But Jackie, the hatred of the Dodgers for the Giants and vice versa was such that Jackie's his attitude was, and this was against O'Malley. This was absolutely against O'Malley, because O'Malley really didn't like Jackie.
No.
And O'Malley tried to find a way to get rid of him and did, and traded him to the Giants. And Jackie wasn't going to give O'Malley the satisfaction, and so he quit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, O'Malley, I don't know, O'Malley. There's a lot to be said about O'Malley. Not all of it is kind.
Right.
I have to ask you this, Peter Golenbock. I have to ask you this. When you interviewed Rachel Robinson,
yes.
Number one question was, did you interview her all at once? And secondly, did you interview her in person? Those are my two questions.
In person.
And all at once, or did you go back a few times?
Not a few times. I don't remember how many times I interviewed her. I don't, but it was for several hours. And she was charming and wonderful. She's the sort of woman. I saw her a couple of years ago. She was 91 years old. I couldn't help myself. I went up and I gave her a hug. I don't even know if she wanted the hug, but I gave it to her anyway.
Yeah.
Why do you think, Peter? What?
Why do you think, Peter Golenbock? Why do you think that was the linchpin of the book? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
I think Jackie.
Ralph said that. Go ahead.
I think just Jackie was the most important aspect of the whole thing. To me, it's as much a book about civil rights as it is about baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way I wanted it to be. And so everything that I could write about, for instance, they're going from California to traveling to Daytona Beach and then down to Vero Beach, where she told the story about going to New Orleans and having them thrown off. They put white people on the plane, and so they couldn't get on the plane. They bumped them, and they bumped them a couple of times.
Right.
And then they get on this bus where they have to sit in the back of the bus. Now these people are from California. They're not used to be treated like shit.
No.
College educated. The college
and they told her she couldn't use the ladies' room. They told her she couldn't use the ladies' room, but she used it anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm glad you told that.
Jackie,
I think that's the most poignant story of the book, right there. That sets the tone for what he and his wife had to go through.
Yeah.
And
the joy. You have no idea the joy of my sitting there and listening to her tell these stories.
I'm sure.
You know, it didn't turn out this way because she ended up living to be 91. But always when you're doing these interviews, you're saying to yourself, you know, I have saved these stories for posterity.
Right.
Tell Peter Trunk and I about it. That's how we think when I do the show with you, when all the shows on the network. It is for nothing but posterity. So
I can understand that.
Yeah. So I never had the chance to thank both Peters at the same time for being integral parts of this network, and
well, thank you.
I hope it can continue, and we stay healthy enough to do this for a long, long time, because it's
Ralph. Wait a minute, Ralph.
Ralphie,
hold it, Ralph. It sounds as if you're wrapping up the show, and if you are, that's fine. But I need to ask a very, very important question to Peter Golenbock, if I may.
Sure.
I heard in many places.
Yeah.
This is the rumor I heard, and people swear by it.
Okay.
It's either Roger Kahn or Peter Golenbock. It's either Boys of Summer or Bums. But one of you authors, either the aforementioned Roger Kahn or you.
Roger and I were once very close friends.
We're told by an ex-Brooklyn Dodger, or his son, actually, that so-and-so will not be interviewed for less than $5,000 an hour. And a Dodger refused to be interviewed for the book. Now, I don't know if that was Kahn or Golenbock. So if it was you, Peter, you would know if it was you. So I want you to come clean here and tell our audience if that, in fact, is a truism.
Well, the only Dodger player, and it was the strangest thing. I called Joe Black up, and he was from Phoenix, or one of these towns in Arizona, and he was involved in something in Norfolk, Virginia. So he agreed to meet me in Norfolk, Virginia, and let me interview him about his time with the Dodgers. So, you know, I fly from New York to Norfolk, Virginia, and Joe Black is there, and he looks me up and down and says, "I'm not talking to you."
Whoa.
And it was, I could only think he wasn't going to talk to me because I was white. I mean, why else wouldn't he talk to me? Because on the phone he didn't know whether I was white or black, obviously. But he was the only Dodger. He was the only Dodger who treated me badly.
Wow.
And he just walked out? He said, I'm not talking to you?
I'm not talking to you. I wasted all that time and money traveling from New York to Norfolk to interview him. The damnedest thing. So it's
in a sense, though, it wasn't a waste, because you got that reaction, and that's a strange one for him to set it up. Whoa.
Very, very strange. I mean, this is the first time I've ever told this story. I mean, nobody's ever asked about this before. I mean, it's not terribly interesting, and Joe Black was not one of the most important people, so it wasn't that big a deal. But it just was weird.
Right.
But in terms of somebody else,
Peter Trunk, is that the gentleman you had in mind, or was somebody
else?
You know,
I don't know, because all the rumors, I'll call them rumors for lack of a better word. All the rumors that I heard was either Kahn or Golenbock was not ambushed. Gee, what's the word I'm looking for? They just didn't get the interview that they thought they were going to get from a Dodger player. Somebody said my father takes $5,000 for an interview, $5,000 an hour, and he's not going to talk to you. or something like that, just refused to be interviewed. And the rumor, of course, it was Shotgun Shuba's kid. Okay? Now, I met Shotgun Shuba a number of times. He was always nice to me, very nice to my wife, Linda, and I just can't picture it, and I didn't have the balls to ask him face-to-face if he ever said that to either Roger Kahn or Peter Golenbock, but
no.
That was the rumor that it was he who said that. I never heard the Joe Black story.
No, he never said that to me. I'm not
Good.
sure I even interviewed Shotgun Shuba. You know, I didn't interview every single person. The outfielder I did interest was Abrams,
Okay.
Cal Abrams,
Right.
and he told some fascinating stories. When he was in Texas, he was the only Jew down there, and the players were rubbing his head trying to find his horns.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
And one of the
he
players
was buried in his Dodger uniform, Peter. Did you know that?
I love it. I just love it. He was
buried in his Dodger uniform.
That doesn't surprise me.
Finish your story, though. Go ahead.
And the other thing, one of the players down there wanted to know whether he was a Catholic Jew or a Protestant Jew.
Gee whiz. Oh, man.
It's funny, unless you're the guy whose head they're rubbing to find out whether he's got
right. It goes on today, though, with all races. That's why this immigration thing with the Muslims sets us back thousands of years. We might as well, with this president, the way things are going, we're being set back.
Somebody has got to step up. Somebody's got to step up and speak out.
Hopefully it's John McCain. Hopefully it's John McCain.
Yeah, but it's got to be more than just one guy.
Right.
Got to be
but
more
it's
than
nice
one
that
guy.
It's coming from the Republican side of the aisle with John.
It's got to, because the Democrats have no clout. It's got to come from the Republican side of the aisle. So we'll see what happens. We will see what happens.
You know, Peter and Ralph. Before I say goodnight, I was raised a Catholic, born in Brooklyn. All our neighbors were either Italian, Irish, or Jewish, and I can't get over this. This is what kills me. Here's what kills me. It's 2017, okay? Yep. And I live in the United States of America, okay? So I go on Facebook like any other guy, and I look at stuff and I read stuff. Whenever I read something that is outrageously right-wing, like a meme, am I pronouncing that right? M-E-M-E, meme?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I never did quite figure out what that means.
Okay, but it's like a story with and the headline is the picture, and then you click on it and you can see the etymology of the provenance of that whole story, where it came from, and who said it. And when I see something extremely right wing that I am totally incredulous about, that it can't even be true, I'll click on it and I'll read the story. Okay? If you scroll down when the story is over, and all the way down on the bottom, you keep scrolling down, it'll say comments.
Yes.
And everybody and his brother from around the world commented on this thing. And the first 5 or 10 comments will be 100% for the right-wing meme. Okay? They're backing it up completely. Then all of a sudden you'll come to someone that says, why are you so hateful and why are you so misogynist and bigoted and blah, blah, blah. And the very next comment will be, I smell a Jew.
Ah, okay.
In all of them. This is 2017. This is 2017.
Well, I mean, all of these things are below the surface, but now Trump has got this guy Bannon, who was a flat-out anti-Semite, and they're flogging this anti-Semitism and anti-black and anti-Latin and anti-immigrant. This guy ran as a white supremacist. That's what he ran at. Now, you and I can't believe that anybody could be so bigoted. We can't believe that.
We
And
can't
again,
believe
I don't want to bring
for a man that's so bigoted. How about the people that voted for him? 46 to 48%.
Absolutely bizarre.
Right.
But all I can think of, and I don't want to bring up the Nazis because I'm not saying that Trump is a Nazi. All I can think of, though, is the people who lived in Germany in the 1930s and are sitting there the way we're sitting and watching this and saying, how in the world could we have elected this house painter with this mustache, and what the hell is he going to do? Mm-hmm. And, of course, you know what he ended up doing. You know, we don't know what Trump is going to do. We don't. But I hope to hell it isn't anything close to what that guy did. No.
Well, there are people that in high positions, former security people, heads of the CIA, this, that, they're calling him deranged.
Yes, they are. They're calling him deranged.
I can see them having to make an intervention and just say, listen, we can't go on
like
this.
But none of this will happen without the cooperation of the Republicans. They can call him deranged until the frickin' cows come home. But unless the Republicans in Congress do something, he's going to be the president. Well,
very interesting comment from a friend of mine on Facebook. A friend of mine who happens to be on Facebook, Mike Welsh, said, what we need to do as a progressive democratic mindset is get a Congress elected in the next 2 years. With some gonads.
We have to. The Democrats have got to win the House.
Right.
And if it continues to go, who is that wonderful fellow who does the polling? We all love. Nate Silver.
Yeah. 538.
Nate Silver is saying right now that if things remain the way they are right this moment, that there is a real possibility of the Democrats taking over the House. And that's a hell of a lot of people. Because you've got to get Republican states to vote Democratic for that to happen.
Yeah.
And Silver's saying right now that Trump is so scary that that's not out of the question.
Silver also had Hillary winning 90% to 10%. So
I know.
Nate's a little low in my estimation.
Well, no, it wasn't just Nate. There was who did have Trump winning.
Nobody did.
The guy, the filmmaker with the long hair and the baseball cap.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm still not convinced. I'm still not convinced that the reason he was saying that was to scare people so that they would vote for Hillary.
Oh, sure. I'm positive that's what he was saying.
I'm not convinced that he actually believed that.
He didn't. I don't believe that either, Peter. I believe he said it just for the reason you said it. He was trying to scare people. But he did say it over and over and over and over.
Yeah, I know.
The three of us have discussed this item for going on 2 years now. I think the devil in all of this is the DNC and Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Yeah, well, let's change the subject because I don't agree with you and never will. How's that?
Okay. Then how about rather than change the subject, how about we call it a show? Not because
Wonderful, Ralphie. This was terrific.
Love to hear that. I know you feel the same way, Peter Trunk.
I do, and listen, it was a pleasure meeting you, Peter Golenbock, and I want to do your show, Golenbock University. I want to do all those shows. I want to ask me. I want to come on. I want to talk about. I want to talk about those Brooklyn Dodgers.
Well, you are welcome to come on. You are welcome to come on anytime. Literally.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
That makes me feel so good. Got the two Peters together. Peter Golenbock, you say hello to the two Wendy's for me.
Will do.
And Peter Trunk to your lovely Linda. Thank you both for being my friend.
All right.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Good.
Bye-bye.
See you next week, everybody. Keep on keeping on.